Welcome to video 2 on updating existing content within one. Now we're going to be covering on this second half these items. We're going to be talking about 4 buttons that we didn't cover during the first video that you may not have seen before. We're going to talk about snippets, what they are and how they're used to present content. And then we're going to have a little bit of a piece on just the what. It's not enough to be able to present the content and get it out there. It's just sometimes you need to give a little bit of thought in terms of how it's presented and how it can best be digested or understood and retained by someone viewing that content. So firstly, I would like us to go back to 1, and you'll notice that this is the live or production environment because there's no authoring in the URL at the top here. So let's go and let's look at the page. Let's just remind ourselves of the page that we went into and edited as part of part 1. So IT and technical assistance within tools and resources here. 1 intranet. Authoring training section. So that's within my workspace, tools and resources, IT and technical assistance, 1 intranet, 1 authoring training section. It's a long breadcrumb to remember. There's also a shortcut in your community as well, in your editing existing content community. And here's the page that we updated within the authoring environment earlier. And there it is, from our handy sample Word document. This is the content that we put in. So we can see that we made our changes in authoring, we made them live, and then they appeared here on the rendering environment. And you can see, and this is why you don't need to add a footer as you go through. Any page you update automatically has this appear at the bottom of it. So it has a published by, and unsurprisingly it's published by myself, and it has an owner as well. And you can have multiple owners for certain content items. And we can cover that shortly. So let's say that we've gone in, we've added our initial content, we want to go in and make some additional changes, but something above and beyond what we've done so far, which is just the standard authoring tools. So the first step, as you'll know from the previous video, is to go into the authors community. That's the author community with the 2 links. That's the URL for updating the web content. I'm also going to open the manual because we're going to look at it shortly. So I'll click on that and I'll download it. I'll click on open, and shortly when we come to that point we'll reference this document that opens, this PDF, and there it is, all 58 pages of it. So that's there ready, but what I'd like to do first is let's go back into the authoring environment, because first I'd like to cover those 4 buttons. So I've clicked on the second link, which is the authoring URL, and now as you can see from the top here, we're in author.one.actor.com. you can see that at the top, and I am going to go to my area now, to my page. So again, it's tools and resources, IT, 1 intranet, 1 authoring training section. Click on the one with the name on, click on the drop down as we did before, edit. And here it is again. The owner field that's displayed at the bottom, I've just shown you. If you wanted to add multiple owners here, so that people could know who to go to an event of content, you can just do that by clicking on the owner option there. And let's say I want to add Graham Keane. If I click on search, he'll just show up as if I was searching for his profile. Click on add. OK, and now there'll be 2 owners shown at the bottom of this page next time we save. Let's continue downwards. So we're happy with the title, and the title is consistent with the breadcrumb up here. But let's say that we want to change some content. Let's click into it. The content that we want to change revolves around the 4 buttons we didn't cover in the previous one. 1, 2, 3, 4. And rather counterintuitively, I'm going to look at each of those 4 from right to left. So firstly, when you're updating content like this, it's a little bit like updating content whilst peering through a letterbox. It's quite a thin amount of space. You've got a small canvas to work on. What you can do is click on the first of the 4 buttons, window view, and what that will do is pop it out so that you've actually got a bit more room to play with, which makes life a little bit easier when you're working with larger pages. In reality, you shouldn't have very large pages. You should look to condense them, to repurpose them, to use bullets to break them up. Think of them as you would be viewing them as a user yourself. But sometimes it can be a bit easy to see what you're working on here. Now we can see that there's a regular spacing on this particular page, so I want to correct this so it's consistent throughout. Whenever you press enter within the editor, it'll go down 1 line, and that will normally be presented as a paragraph break when it's saved and when it's displayed. If you want to effectively move it down, not a full paragraph but another line to space it out, if you hold down shift and then press enter, that's a line break. So sometimes you might find if you're looking to space content down and you press enter twice, 1, 2, then it can be too large a space. But if you hold down shift and enter, then quite often you'll find actually it moves it down slightly and leaves a little bit less white space, which looks a bit better. But let's say that we've dropped in a line break here. We've removed one there so it's consistent. Let's say that we want to do the next task, which is this next button along, insert table, which is very similar to Word. I want to drop in a 2-column by 3-row table, or vice versa, 3-column by 2-row. I'll draw it, click on it, it will now populate it. I can then just type straight into my table and put in my tabular information here. Now what you can see is that it's not a particularly attractive table. So what you can do here, should you wish to make it a bit more attractive, is if you right click on the border of the table, so over to the right here, you get table properties option. If you click elsewhere, sometimes it doesn't always work. It's working everywhere at the moment, but typically speaking, I normally click on the border and click on table properties, and that allows you just to tweak the table. So if you want to make it so the table isn't the full width of the page, you can change the percentage to 75%. If you want to make it so it pads out the spacing a little bit, you can add in cell padding and spacing, so you'll get a bit more white white space around your copy. Border size, I think borders can look a bit unattractive on tables, so I'm going to put that down to 0. And background colour, you can use a background colour if you really want to. I'd normally recommend against it. It can distract from what's within there. But if you click on there, if you use a kind of a light pastel colour, then that will then be applied to the background. So I've made a few changes there using that right click option. Click on OK, and there you go. It has just reformatted my table a little bit. So if I was to work with that, if that was the extent of my changes, and I then pop it back in again by pressing that window view button, you'll see I've now got my table within the rest of my content. I'm going to format my copy and center align it. I can also center align the table itself if I wish to, within the center of the page. That was by right clicking the edge of the table and clicking on table properties again. And it's a bit more of an attractive table than what you get by default. So when I do get people asking me about tables, I normally suggest they do something like that. It just, from a presentation point of view, it looks a bit nicer. So that's tables. The third of the 4 buttons, add image from Old Wickham Library. Not a very user-friendly message that it gives you there. Old Wickham, whenever you see it referenced, is Lotus Web Content Management. That's the system we're using. And the reason it's saying there's a library is because there is one. When we moved 4 old intranets into one, we brought with them thousands of images that you as an author can go in and help yourself to. A lot of those images within there are appropriate for use for AXA, because within AXA we don't like the use of clip art, the cartoon style graphics. A lot of the graphics within this library were professionally sourced, previously used on the intranet, and a bit more appropriate for use. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on that button. So I've clicked on it, I've said insert an image, and I've got 2 options. I've got an option over the left hand side here where I can upload an image. So if I've got an image myself that we own, that's been procured somewhere else and just doesn't happen to be in the library yet, you can save it locally or get it on a shared drive or ask someone to email it to you. Or what I can do is go into the library itself and go into UK images. So I've selected insert a library image. All of our images in the UK are in UK images. And you can see within here there are hundreds and hundreds of images, and you can just view them, hover over them and view what they are. Now some of these are named well and some of them aren't. The naming convention should be that the pixel sizes, the pixel dimensions are apparent, and the what is actually happening in the image itself is shown as well. So an appropriate name to include in there would have been boardroom or meeting. Game, I think you might find in future. And the reason why it's important that you actually name it appropriately is because a year down the line since you've last used the image, you might not necessarily be able to quickly find it in the great big long list of thousands. So what you can do is quickly click on search, and let's look for, let's say we want a picture of Paul Evans. I'm going to click on Paul Evans. And now all of the images with Evans, or Evan in that case, a close match within the name, are here. You can see all of them have got the dimensions and a description of what it is. So that's a 150 wide by 225 high picture of Paul Evans with a white background. There's a slightly smaller one, Paul, that's a close-up with a white background. Leaning, that's a taller one, thinner one. It's all different sizes. There's Paul walking through a door, and so on and so forth. So let's say we wish to have, let's have that one. So I will select it from the library. I want it to be left aligned so the text flows around it, which is often the case. And then I'm going to click on OK. And there it is. So there's a picture of Paul, just peering over the top there. So I'll embed that, carry on typing, the text will wrap around the picture, as so. And the reason why we always recommend that you use these library images is because if that picture ever changes in the future, if it's ever updated for a new one, then your page, and indeed every other page that references that image, all automatically just pull in a new copy of it, which makes a lot more sense. And that's why, really, we always want to check the library first, because you can embed an image of your own locally, as we saw, but it makes more sense to firstly just go in and check in the image library to make sure you're not duplicating effort and duplicating images. So the image is in there. Let's pop it out. Let's use the first of the 4 buttons I showed you. Pop it out, and there we go. There's Paul. You can, once it's in there, you can right click and you can tweak the image. So you can, it's left aligned. Let's say you want to add some horizontal spacing around it and some vertical spacing, so there's a bit more white space. Let's say you want to tweak the size down, which you can do. As long as you keep that aspect ratio ticked so it doesn't get stretched or skewed, you can tweak the size down, click on OK, and there you go, a bit of white space. It will be rendered nicely when it's generated, and it's a bit smaller. Don't ever try and enlarge the size of the image there, because you will lose some quality and it won't look very attractive. So yeah, we have embedded a properly named image of Paul Evans that we could quickly find because it was intuitively named. Let's pop that back in, and there we go. The page is starting to take shape now. That's the 3 of the 4 buttons. But let's say that actually we want to, at this stage now, before we do the last button, let's just save and close and make those changes live as they are. Because you don't have to sit and do it all in one sitting. There we go. We can see that since we've gone in as part of this second video, that we've gone in, we've created a table, we've dropped in an image and we started wrapping text around it. We can also see that at the bottom now, the owners are updated to include Graham Keane and also myself as well. So let's go back into it. We want to make further changes using that final button and also look at the snippets as well. Okay. Scrolling down into the content, click on it, opens up the interface. It's always exactly the same process. The 4th button is links. Whenever people want to create content, they want to create links to other things. And there's 4 types. You can link to another Wickham or web page. You can link to a collaborative page, such as a blog or community. You can link to an external site, and then you can link to a document. Those are pretty much the 4 different types of links. So that's the copy that we want our links to be. We just need to add the links to them. So I'm going to click on the fourth button, create link to Lewickham content. Again, not very named in a friendly way, but it's the little link icon, unsurprisingly. I'm going to click on it. And exactly as when I dropped an image, it's saying, okay, you want to insert a link, tell me where. So exactly the same scenario, really. Browse content. And this time we're in UKEN. All our content in the UK is defaulted to UKEN, all the different web pages. So if we click on content, home, my workspace, tools and resources, IT and technical assistance, one intranet. This probably sounds a bit familiar because we've been through it a few times. We are basically just looking through from the back, the structure of the site, and just pointing at a certain page. So within to the next page, I'm going to click on next because there's quite a few children in this area. And there you go, one authoring training section, that's what I'm looking for. So I want a link to training page 1 in this scenario. And I've clicked on it. I've selected it and now clicked on OK. And there you are. It's automatically dropped in my path. I click on OK. Now the reason we do it that way, rather than typing in a URL, is because if that page is ever moved in future around the structure, all the links into it automatically get updated, including on this page here. So that's why it's always best practice to point at the pages, as I've just shown you, rather than try and type in or paste in a URL. For collaborative content though, the pages don't actually change. Because whenever you set up a community, I'm just going into one now. So here's one, here's a French community. And whenever one's set up, you'll see at the top here a unique ID is assigned to it. And that unique ID will never change. So we don't have to worry about dropping in a relative link or pointing at it. In the case of community or a blog or a wiki or anything with this in the connections area, I can just copy that. And I'm going to do that by pressing Ctrl+C, or if you prefer, right-click copy. And then going back into my my page here, I'll correct that capital L. I'll highlight the text. And I will just paste in the URL. Ctrl+V or right-click paste if you prefer. Click on OK. You are now linking to that community. Linking to an external site is pretty very similar because of course we can't point. That's not within our domain. So again, click on that link icon. And you would then drop in your external link. If you don't put in the HTTP, it will not work. So in this scenario here, if I was just to put in www.google.co.uk, that would not work. You have to put the HTTP://. But the easiest way to do it is just to copy. So if we just go into Google, copy the URL, paste it in there. And the only thing you have to change is to make it so link target, just new window. And all we're saying there is that we want to link to Google, but we want it to open in a new window on top of one. We don't want to lose where we are. Click on OK. And there you go. That's dropped in a link to an external site. And then lastly, on this fourth button here, is the link to a document. I'm going to highlight that. And again, I'm going to click on that link. And browse content again, because all the documents are held within one. And we're in UKEN because it's remembered where we're working. But this time, instead of content, we're looking at components because that's what documents or files are called in authoring. And then, exactly as with images, once it generates a list of all the files, some of which are named very unintuitively. So please try to if you ever create documents, avoid naming them things like that. But if they're named appropriately, I should imagine there's quite a few that contain the word structure. You can quickly search for them in future, which is useful if you haven't used them for a year or so. If you can't remember what they were called, well, you can have an educated guess. And what I've just asked it to do is list all of the documents with the word structure in. And there you go. Here are quite a few documents. Let's say we want to link to this group tax structure document. I'll select it, click on OK. So there you go, group tax structure. You don't have to select a new window in this case because it will just open up in Word or Adobe Reader if it's a PDF or whatever it is. That's the 4 different types of links. And by the same token, if you want to drop in links in the related information here, if I was to copy those, right-click copy or Control-C, whichever you prefer, then you will find that you can then paste within related information. And then those links will then appear on the right-hand side of the page. Click on Save and Close. And there we go. And then finally, we're going to look at snippets. You'll notice on some pages that some of the content has boxes around it, and some of it's laid out in kind of 3 columns across the page. Within the author toolkit that we opened earlier, within the appendix are snippets, which are standard little bits of code that you can take and borrow for your page. There's a bit of information further up in terms of what they're used for on page 25, on page 22. But if we were to go into it, let's say if we wanted to add a grey border box around some links and related information. It doesn't have to be a grey border box. You can have 2 boxes, you can have 3 boxes per row. You can do quite a few different things. Let's take a grey border box. You could actually just go and take that standard template, copy it, right click copy, and if I then go back into the page and edit it, click back into the content, so this is the only time you ever need to click on this code button here. So let's say that we want to drop in a grey box underneath here with some content in it. Go to where you want to drop the box, click on code, and then just put that snippet, a pre-written snippet, just paste it in exactly as it is. So I've gone into code view, click back into design view, and here you go. So this is your header. There's your placeholder text. And if you were to now generate that, you would have a grey border box. If I want to, so you can see I'm just moving through the content. If I wanted to have 2 boxes in a row, I would select this one here. Right click, copy, or Control C if you prefer. So I want to have the 2 boxes underneath here. Go back into code view, I'll just paste it in exactly as it was. Go back into design view. You can see that this is my 2-column box here. So if you ever see any numbers like that, it's just because it was copied over from the footer of the PDF there. Look, you could just disregard that. That's something I need to fix. You can overtype the content, so there's already some dummy content in here. I'm just going to save and close there. Let's have a look how that looks. And you can see now that I've got a grey box, a single column grey box, and then I've got 2 boxes here to put content in. There are other ones in there as well. There are promo boxes which have a ribbon along the top, and there's 3 boxes as well. There are a few different options within the manual. I recommend you have a look at some of the content around one. The standard templates are there, which you can use without changing in any way. If you have any issues, then please contact your local intranet manager. Your local intranet manager will always be accessible via the contact link at the bottom of every one page, along with links to their profiles. So that's our page. We've gone through, and we just need to kind of consider the how now. I beg your pardon. We need to consider the what now, as opposed to the just the how. So this page is fine. It's a little bit long. You might be able to break it down a little bit. You might be able to use bullets. There's a few different options for being able to tweak and improve. Before you move on with the exercise, which is what we're going to be covering shortly, please go back to the community once you've finished watching this video and have a quick look at the cheat sheet. There it'll talk through some common things that you can do just to improve and make more concise the content and making it more easy to digest. I'd highly recommend that you give it a read. It's a 1-pager, it's very quick to digest. And then once you have, I'd like to come back here to your page, and I would like you then to update your page and create it. I'd like you to go in and work with the content. I'd like you to click on every single button within the editor. I'd like you to embed an image, link to a document, link to a Wickham page, link to a collaborative site, basically everything I've shown you. I'd also like just to see a snippet, just an example of a snippet placed in the page as well. If you have any questions as you go, please leave a note within the updating content community, and I'll be happy to help. When you've completed it, when you've completed that exercise, if you then, once it's all amended, update the thread within the community, then your local intranet manager will then have a look at that page. If they don't come back to you within 2 days, please contact them and ask for them to review it. And then once they do review it, once they're happy that you've taken on board any feedback and given you any pointers as required, your access to be able to get on and start updating your content will normally be set up that day, and you'll be able to get started. That's the end of the video tutorials. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. Any problems, please let us know, and I look forward to hearing from you in the community. Thank you very much.